We are in the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, the last chapter. We may finish it today, we may finish it tomorrow, but I'd like to take this opportunity to really thank all those who've been tuning in to these lessons of Mishlei. I believe this is our 55th session, which is great pace to cover this beautiful book of Proverbs with all of its 31 chapters. So in the final section of Mishlei, King Solomon dedicates an entire section to his mother, good Jewish boy, and he appreciates his mother. And he writes this chapter called Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. And he writes this chapter to thank his mother and to express his appreciation to her. His mother, of course, is Bathsheba, who married David in the famous episode of David and Bathsheba. And King Solomon is thankful to her. Remember, Bathsheba is the one who reprimands him for not being focused enough on being a king and for marrying his 1,000 wives. So he says, in response to her, he says this chapter of Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, thanking his mother. So King Solomon starts, Eshet Chayil mi yimtza. Who can find a woman of valor that is as amazing as his mother? If you find one, it is more precious than finding pearls. Now, the rabbis say this is also talking about the study of Torah and what the Torah does. So there's the double side here, just like everything else in the book of Mishlei. It's called Mishlei Proverbs. It's always, you have the simple reading and you have the metaphor. So a precious wife is more precious than pearls. Batach ba'lev ba'ala. The heart of the woman of valor is always able to trust her. And that's a key element in a relationship, is trust. So King Solomon is saying, number one is that the beauty of the woman of valor is that there can be trust. Now, sometimes if you are too busy talking or too busy with your relationship, you end up not being able to work to be productive. So no, in this case, there's always enough in the house. Next, King Solomon continues, Gmalatu tov velo ra. All she does for him is only good things. Gmalatu tov velo ra kol yemei chaya, her entire life. He continues, and this some people say is talking about other of the matriarchs. Darshat tzemer upishtim vatas bechefetz kapea. She goes out and she finds wool and she finds linen, and she gladly weaves them into clothing. Now, it's interesting because in the book of Deuteronomy, there's a very strict commandment against weaving together wool and linen. And yet King Solomon mentions them together here. And some say it's speaking about the idea of the woman of valor being able to balance two opposite things that you would never find together. So she's able to weave together the wool and the linen. And then he says another beautiful verse, not only is she productive and successful domestically, but also she's a successful businesswoman. She is like the ships of the merchants. She brings her bread and the bread for the home from far away. She wakes up in the middle of the night and brings bread back to her family and supports her maids. Not only, so we've spoken about how the woman of valor is successful domestically, but she's also successful in business and going abroad. Another aspect he's highlighting is real estate. She looks into the right real estate and she buys it. And then what she does is, she is able to plant a vineyard from her with her hands. Next is verse 17, chapter 31, verse 17. She girds her loins, which is a term you don't hear very often, but it's a way of saying, it's a biblical way of saying she's also filled with strength. She has strength in her body and in her hands. Now, once we've spoken about the woman of valor being domestically successful and in business and in her real estate endeavors, she realizes that she's successful at what she does, and so the candle her candle does not go off at night. There's a famous story. One of the great rabbis, Rabbi Israel Salanter, was a very big advocate of thinking through what we do and doing everything with purpose. And he was walking one night, late at night, next to the store of a shoemaker. And he passes next to this store, and he sees it's already 9:10, and the shoemaker is there. And so he wonders, because then especially the second, in those days, this is in the 1800s, once things got dark, you stopped working, you went home, you had supper, and you went to sleep. So he says to the shoemaker, why are you still awake? Why are you fixing shoes late at night when the sun has long set? And the shoemaker said to him, as long as the candle is lit, you can still fix things. And the rabbi left in shock and made that saying world famous. As long as the candle is lit, you can still fix things. Meaning, the shoemaker meant it with regard to the candle and the working in the shoe shop. But the rabbi said, listen, the soul is like, a person's soul is like a candle. As long as the candle is lit, meaning as long as God gives you your soul, as long as you're still alive, you can still fix things up. You can still correct things. So that's what it says here. She works as long as the candle is on. Her candle never goes extinct. Her hands are, you ever go visit the Amish country where they have all these tools for weaving and sewing? They have all these different machineries. So that's what it's talking about here. She's able to master all of those and to masterfully create clothing for the members of her household. But you would think that with all this busyness of the woman of valor, she's industrious and busy and working for her house, and she's going out for business, and she's good with real estate, you would think she has no time for anything else. But no, she extends her hand to the poor person, and she gives her arm out to the person who has no food, and she feeds him. Meaning, not only is this woman of valor successful in the material world, but she also uses it to help others. She is not afraid of the snow, of a snow day, because her entire household is already clothed with beautiful and good clothing. She makes for herself distinguished clothing, and everyone knows that she is successful in what she does. And then finally, after all these verses, we come to the next verse. Her husband is well known among the sages and elders of the city, when he sits with the eldest and wisest of all. She makes a blanket and sells it, and she gives a belt to the merchant. And now we come to a very famous verse, which is, it's also memorialized. There's a few songs for it. Oz vehadar levusha. Her clothing is strength and glory. Vatischak leyom ha'achron, and she's the one who gets to laugh last. Meaning, now again, this is talking about the woman of valor, but it's also talking about a righteous person and a person who follows the Torah. Oz vehadar levusha. Her clothing is beautiful and full of strength. Vatischak leyom ha'achron, and she's the one who gets to laugh. Meaning, a lot of times when you're busy with a worthy cause, people say, oh, why don't you join us for this party, for that party, for this outing, for that outing? And then they laugh when you missed out. But at the end of the day, who gets the last laugh? The person who's led the most meaningful life. But she gets to laugh in the last day. When she opens her mouth, it is with wisdom. And words of kindness are on her tongue, meaning either the Torah, the actual words of the Torah, or it's talking about the words of the her kindness to the poor. Sophia halichot beita. In addition to being successfully the one who's presiding over her home, the business, the real estate. Not only that, Sophia halichot beita. She sees how the people in her household are interacting. She's educating her children. Velechem atzlut lo tochel. She will never eat the bread of laziness, right? So she's always working hard. And what that leads to, verse 28, Kamu baneh vayashrua. Her children rise up and they praise her. Ba'ala vayahalela. And her husband also praises her. And again, the next one is also a very famous song. Rabot banot asu chayil. Many women have done great things. Va'ata al kulana. Yet you have surpassed everyone. And again, King Solomon is saying this about his mother, which is interesting because he's saying it right after she reprimands him. He says, there are many great women, but you are the greatest, he tells his mom. Next, verse 30, Sheker achen ve'evel hayofi. The falsehood of beauty, the falsehood of external beauty, the woman who should be truly praised is the woman who fears God and follows in God's path. Give her from the fruits of her hand, and everyone will praise her for what she has done. That is the end of the book of Mishlei, the book of Proverbs. I cannot thank everyone enough for being with us, for journeying this book together. I learned so much. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you tuning in. If you have any feedback, comments, thoughts, really anything, please let me know. I very much appreciate it. It's been great. And I definitely hope to be back with something. If there's something particular you have in mind, a preference, a thought, something from the Bible, definitely let me know so that I can plan appropriately. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And God willing, we will meet again. Thank you so much. Thank you. Leitraut.